Welcome to Alliant International University's podcast on the changing nature of work. This podcast was produced in April 2020 by organizational psychology master's and PhD students mentored by Professor Denise Lopez. The goal of our podcast is to provide listeners with insights about how technology and social trends are transforming work, and how leaders can respond constructively to balance employee and business needs. Our first episode is entitled One Life, Work-Life Integration, featuring Amatia Golbodaghi and Asia Goodall. Moving away from work-life balance, which connotes balancing two separate spheres, we note that today's employees are seeking to align personal and professional experiences in a more holistic manner. Asia and Amatia discuss organizational implications and highlight best practices to help employers create a flexible work environment that supports employees in different life stages.
Hi everyone, thanks Dr. Lopez for the introduction. I'm Amatia.
And I'm Asia.
Welcome to the first episode of The Changing Nature of Work. In the midst of all the unexpected changes with COVID-19, it's a perfect time to discuss our topic of work-life integration.
I agree. And I just want to point out the irony of this project. We started researching this in February, knowing that one day we would be facing this challenge. And now here we are, only a few months later. What a crazy 2020 it's been.
I agree. What a hectic year, and we're not even halfway through it. In the next 20 minutes, we'll be discussing the difference between work-life balance and work-life integration. We'll talk about what the research says and provide examples of how organizations have created one life for their employees. We hope this inspires you to make impactful changes in your organizations after this pandemic.
Our current crisis with COVID-19 have unveiled the truth regarding work-life balance. The idea of work-life balance is that one creates a separation between work and their personal life, just as if the two doesn't coexist. Amatia, I must agree when Sheryl Sandberg said there is no such thing as work-life balance. There's work and there's life, and there's no balance. And if you're a couple of PhD students like us, there's nothing but chaos.
Definitely, it's just all chaos. This work-life balance idea creates a competition within ourselves because in a way, it makes us believe that we are and must live two lives, one at work and one at home, when the truth is we really only have one life. Balance implies there's a trade-off, meaning that we have to choose whether we give our 100% to work or at home. We should be able to have it all. Work-life integration will take the frustration and guilt we feel when we have to choose the two.
I agree. And recent research shows that having work-life integration is important because flexibility creates a competitive advantage in the war on talent, meaning the more flexible organizations will attract and attain more skilled and motivated workers.
Of course, and autonomy at work not only leads to higher levels of motivation and satisfaction, but also signals to employees that they are trusted to get their work done and manage their time effectively. Trust is so valuable in this moment we're living in. We are trusting employees by measuring their productivity and output rather than in hours. This might be an avenue worth considering when employees do return to the office. Are we as organizations measuring productivity by the hours or by the value of work that's being done? Asia, how are you integrating your life currently during COVID-19?
Matia, really, the integration has been difficult because I still have a normal work routine. I'm still physically at my office while I have my son at home working from, doing school from Zoom. And I'm having to still tend to everyday needs and, tending to my mother and keeping a regular schedule. So me trying to force all those things together, it's not really been easy for me. What about you?
Yeah, I can only imagine since you are currently still driving to work and you have your child at home, it's a little difficult. For me, I think the hardest thing has been, it feels so lonely to be at home. And it's like hard to be motivated. So I think a couple of things that I've done is just like work in short bursts, which I noticed allows me to have more output, but also I'm more energized in those short 2 hours than I am if I sit an entire 8 hours at a desk and try to work, which isn't possible because there's all these distractions happening at home. The other thing is just making time to like exercise and get your body moving. And also I realized I scheduled some time to do something creative, because I was reading an article that says when you do something creative for 20 minutes, you actually become happier. So trying to shift my mood by coloring in a book. That's what I've been doing from home. But it's interesting, Asia, that some companies were already moving towards work-life integration before the pandemic. For example, there's a company named Limeade that allowed their employees the flexibility of taking time off from work whenever they thought it was necessary. It was because they believed and created a culture that was focused on trust and autonomy so that flexibility could flourish. Another thing that we're all familiar with is Google. Google has people that do your laundry for you. They do your car washes and take care of personal things that you might have going on during the day, so you don't have to necessarily leave the office. Other companies during the summer were doing summer Fridays, so a lot of people wanted to go on dates or go out to concerts, and it was really good weather, so they did summer Fridays where people were able to leave the office earlier during the day. One thing that we do at my company at Live Nation is that we were really considering how to help our employees at different stages of their life. And one of the really great benefits we came up with to support work-life integration was called Roadie Babies. And this is when, imagine, Asia, if you were working in our company and you were one of the touring women, and a lot of the times our touring industry, they have to travel a lot, but you had a 2-year-old or a 1-year-old. How would you feel about leaving your kid at home for 2 months or a week, even when you were traveling?
I would know what to do.
Right? And you don't want to be away and miss those moments. So this perk really, we allow our parents to travel with their children. It doesn't have to be a mom. It could be a dad as well if they're in the touring industry. And you can take your child with you, and we pay for that, as well as a caretaker. So it could be your spouse, or it can actually be a family member, whoever you want to travel with you to take care of your kid while you're working. So that's a couple of ways where I've seen companies integrate that work life.
Nice. Very interesting.
And if Asia, a company wanted to redesign based on research and best practices, what are some tactics they should know about?
Well, based off of my research, there are a few things you can do for organizations to align yourself with work-life integration. So the first few things is just changing the mindset of your workplace and really getting the feedback from your employees and understanding their needs. Like, for example, putting emphasis on outcomes rather than hours. People really, when they're working from home, it's hard to clock hours. And so how do you measure productivity? You're going to have to put more emphasis on the outcome and the deliverables over the hours. And what does it mean to actually be productive? You have to reframe what that means. Do you have any examples, or have you seen that before?
Well, I was just going to say, when you were talking about really understanding the needs of your employees, so that means not all companies have to do your laundry for you like Google, right? Or wash your car, because that might not be their need, right? So that was an interesting point that I wanted to say about really meeting the needs of your employees and your organization.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And even the next step would be like promoting and just celebrating the diversity, because like we mentioned, like people have families or people come from all different types of and walks of life. You definitely have to put emphasis and celebrate diversity. For example, research shows that millennials tend to value diversity over salary and benefits. And so bringing that concept of bringing your whole self to work becomes important then. And so in order to do that, though, you have to have a supportive environment. You have to have a supportive culture that is one based on trust, which comes from the managers, and you have to have one that has personal responsibility, which is accountability from the employee side. And those things together help, one, bring up the autonomy, and then two, you have an environment that's ready for that type of change. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I really really think that part about the managers also supporting and really being trustful of their employees is important. I know what we do at our company just to have that supportive culture, and actually managers encourage it, is we do concerts on the roof during the summer, or just in the offices. Yeah, I mean, it's a great place for employees to network, especially if you're new. And actually, it's a really great team bonding experience because the leaders can say, hey, let's step out of the office for 20 minutes and let's go listen to this concert that they're having downstairs or on the roof. Another thing we do is just hosting different types of events depending on where our employees are in their life. So it's interesting.
Oh, that's really nice. I would enjoy working my 8 hours or working my hours and then going to the roof for a nice evening like that. That's cool.
You're always welcome. Just let me know when you want to come.
Also, too, it's really important about establishing and promoting that work-life integration into your policies. So that means having a clear understanding of what it means to have work-life integration in your company and how you as a company value that integration.
Yeah. What I was going to say is, I think you were going to mention it, is about branding. So how can companies actually truly promote this message, right? So is that something that was in the research as well?
Actually, yeah. So if you have a program like that, something that you want to roll out, you have to bring attention to it. And the way you do that, you're absolutely right, by branding. So you have this program, and the way that you do it, you embed it like in your mission or your vision and things like that. And then you package it up really nice. It's just a very common marketing tactic where you slap a name on it, something that your office can chant or that's on the walls or symbolize something, for them to know, wow, this means X, Y, and Z. This means they care about us. This is what that means. And it's important that they can identify what that. Would you have any ideas of how companies can do that, or do you have ideas? Have you seen it before?
I think so. What came to my mind was a tagline that we have, and it's called "Taking Care of Our Own," because it's truly a value of our organization. And instead of having like those cheesy mission or vision statements, I think these authentic, quick 4 or 5 words that really describe our organization is like, we really do take care of our own people. So I think that's how we embed promoting these work-life integration policies into our culture.
Oh, yeah, that's cool. And another one is very simple, just supporting flexible schedules. You know, especially with this issue right now, it's really important that your organizations remain flexible. And when it comes to work-life integration, it's really important that organizations are flexible and able to allow their employees to take time off when needed. So it's like you can go and you get so immersed in work and you are passionate, but allowing employees to take that time off to say tend to personal things too, without that guilt, you know, so having a guilt-free time for personal issues.
Yeah, and what I was going to say here is I think the silver lining in this entire pandemic and COVID-19 is that leaders can now exercise trusting their employees in an authentic way where they probably couldn't have in the past, to build those bonds with them. So simple things of like, if someone has a meeting and they have to put the kids to bed, or their kids take a nap, or they have to cook a meal, you can say, hey, let's move the meeting, or go ahead and take that meeting, we'll reschedule. Or even things like turning off the camera when someone has to speak. Like if your employee says, hey, I can't be on camera right now, but I really want to be on this client call, you respecting that and knowing that they're truly going to be on the call and participating is showing your employees that you trust them. And when you do go back to work, you have built a stronger relationship with them.
Absolutely. And just piggyback off of that, let's just talk about the environment itself. The research says create an innovative workspace. So that also goes back to knowing your employees. And I'm talking about spatially having a workplace design that inspires and motivate your employees. So having an office that is staged in a way that they're comfortable with. So that means that, one, knowing your audience, knowing your industry, that's very important, and knowing what setup will work best for them. And I know people get very creative. You've seen the open air space offices and things like that. But really knowing, one, your industry and knowing your people to be able to create that workspace for them so they can, pretty much thrive.
Yeah, I think it's funny you mentioned that open spaces. I remember I was doing research on that, and the research said that not all companies need to have that open workspace because it's actually not productive for specific industries or even departments. Like, yes, it's really good for collaboration in the marketing department and design departments, but when it comes to like accounting or other departments, people need a little bit of privacy. And even overall, having completely open spaces, I think sometimes it makes people feel a little bit uncomfortable because they don't really have their own space. So I would really urge you to ask back to the point number one that Asia made about ask your employees what they really need, and don't just assume that because all the companies that are like Google and a couple other ones have these open spaces that it's right for your organization as well. I think that's a question I get all the time. And definitely the industry. I think it's interesting, our offices, we have stages so that we can host concerts, but that's a very industry specific office space, because we really want the office to feel like you're walking into a venue, at least the lobby. So our employees feel what a venue feels like, even though they might not be working at a specific venue. So really understand what your employees want and need before you make these decisions, I think is a really key takeaway.
Yeah, I agree. And, with all of this going on, one of the biggest implications of this virus is that it has immediately shown us the undeniable truth about ourselves. We have families, we have lives outside of work. It's just, we really only have one life. And it's that we need to act like it. This is the moment where we're all forced to admit that we're not just employees, but whole selves with elements of we're family members, we're parents, we're friends, and just having to be present and bring our whole selves into work.
Yeah, and that was really nicely summed up. To add on to that, and also to really conclude, is we want to encourage all of our listeners to remember that after all of this is over, and before we're tempted to stuff the pieces of our lives back into their separate corners of just work and just life, let's continue the conversation and strategize with our employers on how we can be better by bringing our whole selves to work. Work will be better, and we will all be better for it.